All right. They are still, that last person is connecting to audio. So I don't want to start talking and then them not know what I'm saying. Okay, they're connected to audio. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We have Lieutenant Francis with us tonight to talk about how to keep yourself safe. I'm not sure exactly what all he's going to share with us tonight, but I know it's going to be great. He has helped me over the years in lots of different areas, coming to co-ops and different things. So whatever he has to share with us tonight, I know is going to be phenomenal. For those of you that can and are in a good location to keep your cameras on, if you can, please do that. If you can't, it's okay. Because I know Christy messaged me earlier and said that they could not, and that's perfectly fine. We just want to make sure there are no creepy stalkers out there. We want to be able to see you, make sure that you're a legit person joining us tonight. Make sure to keep yourself muted unless Lieutenant Francis has questions or wants you to unmute to communicate with him. Of course, unmute then if you have questions. Either type them in the chat box and I'll relay them to him, or you can just ask. I'm sure he won't care if you raise your hand or politely interject. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Lieutenant Francis. If you could share a little bit just about yourself and your background and then what you're going to share with us tonight, and just roll with it. Thank you so much again for being here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. And as she said, I'm Lieutenant Francis. I'm with the Chattanooga Police Department. I have served with the Chattanooga Police Department for 15 years. I have done everything from patrol to homicide to a training officer. I currently am over the technology division, community outreach, our court liaisons office, and our records division. I spend most of my time in technology. So we just make sure everybody's computers are working, the systems are operating, body cameras are working, in-car cameras are working. That's what I spend a lot of my time doing. One of the things I did, probably about 12 or 13 years ago, was I became a basic self-defense instructor through a program called RAD. And we teach basic self-defense classes here at the police department for free. And so what I actually have a PowerPoint presentation I modified for today so that we can go through and just discuss some things that pertain to basic self-defense. We're not really going to go through anything like punches or kicks or anything like that, but we're going to go mostly through situational awareness and what to watch out for in order to stay safe. So I'm going to share my screen here real quick. All right, can everybody see my PowerPoint presentation? All right, here we go. That's the stuff I just covered about my introduction. So self-defense and the law. When we're talking about self-defense, it may be a good idea to have an understanding of how that pertains to a situation. So if you are in imminent harm or injury, if you're facing imminent harm or injury, assault or unlawful detention or abduction, you have the legal right to, I guess the best way to put it would be use violence or use force to defend yourself. So if you're walking down the street and someone says something to you verbally that may upset you, that may be inappropriate, or that may hurt your feelings, you cannot go over there and take physical action against that person. However, if you're walking down the street, someone were to reach out and to grab you by the arm or something of that nature, you can physically resist at that point. So know the difference between what would be a verbal altercation or a physical altercation, and also know the difference between if someone tells you, I intend to do you harm, and then proceeds toward you, you could articulate being able to defend yourself at that point, even if they haven't necessarily touched you. But if you're yelling back and forth with someone, that's not a time to use physical action against that person. So defense against abduction, any force or threat against, this is primarily geared toward ladies. So when it says a woman, it could be a woman or a man that restricts freedom of movement or desire to leave, we consider aggression. So there are 4 risks of personal safety. These 4 risks will make up the majority of your personal safety plan. And that is risk awareness, risk reduction, risk recognition, and risk avoidance. And we're going to talk about all 4 of these things. So risk reduction strategies at home. It's not a bad idea to go around your house and look at areas in which people can gain access and think about all the ways somebody can gain access to your house. We're looking at doors, windows. Sometimes people may think, well, it's a second floor window, somebody can't come in through that window. That's not necessarily true. If you have a second floor window that's right above a shed or a roof overhang or something like that, someone could gain access to that landing and gain access through the window. So look for all the ways someone can gain access to your house. Your drapes and your shades. So your drapes and your shades, it's great to have window coverings. At nighttime, if you have your lights on inside, you have a hard time seeing out unless you have lights on the outside of your house, but people can actually see in. And if your drapes or your shades are very thin material, people can actually see through, and you can actually sit outside and determine the number of people that are inside just by watching movement through those drapes or those shades. So if you're going to have it, a lot of people will have a thinner material and they may have a thicker material behind that. So make sure that when you're closing your drapes or your shades, you're closing the thicker material at nighttime. Outdoor lighting can deter crime. When you have outdoor lighting, you want that pointed from your house out toward your yard. If you go through some of the, the upper end neighborhoods, you'll see people have lights in their yard pointing toward their house. That looks really, really pretty and it looks really neat. But if you're inside your house and you try to look out of the window, you cannot see anything because you're blinded by those lights. So you actually want the lights to go from the house out away so that the person that's approaching the house has a hard time seeing. And that will actually help with the drapes and the shade situation that I just talked about as well. Shrubs and bushes. You don't want your bushes or your shrubs at your house to be so overgrown that they cover your windows, because people can hide behind those and they can work to get your windows unlocked, or they can try and see if your windows are unlocked without anybody being able to see them. Also, when it comes to shrubs and bushes, if you want to plant something near a window, get a good holly bush or something that has thorns and plant that near the window, and that will deter somebody from wanting to hide behind them or crawl through them. Your doors and locks, one-way peepholes. Now it's not as big of a deal because we have digital peepholes. You can actually take a picture of the peephole. Those are great tools. In the past, you could actually install a peephole, but you could look in from the outside, and that was always something to be concerned about. We talked about windows as an entry point, and then you have spare keys. Be careful where you leave your spare key and be careful how often you use it. If possible, it's best to have a neighbor or a family member that you trust to hold a spare key for you. If you leave a spare key outside, there are some pretty common areas people leave them under the mat and a fake rock, all of those things. But also in the event you actually have to go and retrieve your spare key, you don't want it somewhere that's obvious, so that if somebody is watching your house or watching your neighborhood, they're able to watch you go and retrieve your spare key because they'll know where the hiding spot is at that time. Say you're home, you get a knock on the door. You should probably talk to your parents, and depending on what age you are, about whether or not you need to be answering doors if parents aren't around. That's probably not the best strategy. In the event you and your parents are comfortable with you answering the door, if someone comes and knocks on the door, you can do different things like call out and say, "Mom, I've got it," even if your mom's not home, because that will give the person on the other side of the door the impression that your mom or dad may be there. So those are just some risk reduction strategies. Here's some more. Harassing phone calls. Nowadays, it's a little bit easier to block phone calls. Before it was harder. So now you can actually, especially on your cell phone, you can go in and just block the person. Don't continue to allow text messages or phone calls from unwanted numbers. If you don't know how to block a number, which most of you probably know how better than your parents do, to be honest with you. You can go in and block them. You can also contact your phone provider on how to block numbers as well. So when you're out and about, a couple of things you can do. If you've ever gone, let's say, to a Walmart parking lot, and a lot of times you pull into a row and all the cars are parked the same direction. You want to walk in the same direction that the cars are pulled into the spaces. And what that does is that allows you to be able to see down in between the cars before you get to that car. If you walk the opposite direction, so if you come out of Walmart and you're looking at the front end of all of the cars and the tail ends are out to the center aisle and you're walking against the direction they're parked, you're actually walking past the opening of the car before you can see if there's someone hiding behind that. So if you walk the same direction that the cars are parked, both to your car and away from your car, you can actually see if anyone's crouched down in between the cars before you get there. When you get to your vehicle, make sure you have your keys ready to unlock your car. Nowadays, it's a lot easier. Most cars have key fobs. In the event you don't have a key fob, whenever you get your first car or your parents buy you your first car, it may not, but have your key in your hand and have it ready to unlock the door. Don't get to your car and have to fumble through your purse or your pocket or move bags around in order to get to your set of keys. In case there's an incident in the parking lot and you need to be able to get into your car and get away fast, you want to be able to do that immediately. You can always check inside the car, check the back seat, just look around before you jump in the car. If you're being followed, way back when we had these things called payphones. There are still a few in existence. And I don't know if you've ever seen one or not. If you want to see one, if you're in the Chattanooga area, there's the shell of one at the Amigos at Harrison Bay. So just a little tidbit. But you can use your cell phone. My advice, if you're being followed, would be call the police, get 911 on the phone, and let them know where you're at, and go to a well-lit, very public area and wait for the officer to show up. Do not go home. Do not go to a friend's house. You don't want to lead them, one, into a neighborhood, two, in any location you can get abducted, and three, you don't want them knowing where you live. So go to a well-lit public area, call the police, don't get out of the car until the police arrive. And then if you have a disabled vehicle, especially now with cell phones, you can call the police, and if they're available, they'll come and sit by, maybe keep traffic off of you until somebody can get there. But lock your car doors, make sure your windows are up. And if someone approaches you, you can just barely crack a window in order to talk to them if you need to. If you don't feel comfortable with the situation or the person, don't crack your window even. You can, even if you have something to write on, you can write a note, put it up against the car window. I have someone on the way, or whatever needs to happen. You can always go for assistance at a service station, a Walmart, anything like that, and then make sure and talk to the people that work there. We covered parking lots, we covered keys. So when it comes to keys, you can actually hold your key, instead of holding it between your thumb and your pointer finger. If you hold it between your pointer finger and your ring finger, you can actually use that as a weapon to jab at people as well. And so you're looking at soft tissue, eyes, throat, nose area, if you were to need to do that. In all of your elevators, there's an alarm button. So if you were in an elevator and somebody were to try to get on the elevator with you, it's okay if you feel uncomfortable just to get off of the elevator. Let them take that elevator ride by themselves. There's no need to wait in the elevator with somebody that you feel uncomfortable with. Even if it's not the floor you need to get off on, get off of the elevator, let them take the elevator ride, wait a few minutes, and then you can take the elevator to where you need to go. Or it depends on your location, depends on the environment. You may even be able to take the stairs. So if you're in a plane, get the stewardess attention and let them know what's going on. We've seen increased incidents on planes recently of people just having really poor behavior with this whole epidemic that's going on right now. That has actually increased. So, and then when driving, just be aware of your surroundings and be aware if someone's following you or not. If you take multiple turns and that car continues to take multiple turns in the exact same manner you do, you may just want to be aware of that. You may not want to go directly home. You may even want to drive completely around the block to see if they still follow you. Most people don't just go out just to drive around the block. So that would be unusual behavior, and that would alert you that something's going on. And then when you get to the point of dating, whenever you start dating and somebody drops you off from a date, or you go to separate ways at night, don't feel pressured into doing anything for that person or with that person. Don't don't even go down that road. It's best just to say goodnight and to end the evening there. So a couple of other things that come up are advertising on your vehicle. You may have a phone number or a company name or even a contact name. It may be your name or a parent's name on that vehicle. That can give someone enough information where they can approach you and act like they know you. If you have your name and phone number on the back of your vehicle because you're advertising for a business, that someone could approach you and say, hey, Blake, how are you doing, man? It's been a long time. And you actually have no idea who this person is. But because it was on the advertising, whether it's a t-shirt or vehicle or whatever it was, that feeds them information. Clothing, same way. And then just be cautious with whatever you do. The 4 risks of personal safety are 90% of self-defense education. There's another thing that we call the victimization triangle. And you think about any time an incident happens, there are 3 different components to that incident. There's the victim, there's the assailant, and there's the opportunity. Whoever's being attacked obviously is the victim. The assailant you can't necessarily control. So what we try to do is we try to control the opportunity, and we limit those opportunities that assailants have to victimize people. So what we want to do is pay attention, be observant, and remove any opportunity that exists. So preparatory defense mindsets. All aggressive behavior is equally criminal, and it's important to defend against. As you get older, as you start dating, something that may come up is that if I do something for you, I expect something in return. And that's not a real relationship. That's not a real friendship. Those are things that should set off warning alarms in your head. And it may just be simple, like, I bought you dinner, I think I deserve a kiss, or something like that. I'm just telling you right now that is inappropriate, and you need to watch out for that type of behavior, because what that can lead to is more controlling behavior in the future. So you want to find relationships that are mutually beneficial, where everybody is involved in the relationship, not because they're expecting to get something from the other person, but because they're wanting to give things to the people involved in the relationship. So physically restraining or attacking behavior is aggression and not acceptable dating practice, and no means no, no matter what the circumstances of the encounter are. So if you see somebody who's actually physically restraining, let's say you're at a party or you're out with friends and someone's continually isolating a specific person, right? And that type of behavior needs to be recognized, that someone's actually being victimized through that behavior, and they're being set up to become a victim in the future of even worse behavior. So those are just some things to look out for. And continuing with the pattern of inappropriate behavior, if someone's too touchy or takes too many liberties when they're talking, demonstrates a lack of respect, attempts to isolate the intended victim, those are all subtle attacks, and they may escalate if the person tries to resist, and they may escalate over time. So if someone makes you feel uncomfortable, there's nothing wrong with letting that person know you made me feel uncomfortable. Some people I know are just a little more touchy than other people. I have friends that when they talk to me, they'll reach out and touch me on the arm when they talk to me. Personally, I'm not a real touchy-feely kind of guy. But if it ever made me uncomfortable, I would just let them know, hey, I would appreciate if you didn't touch me when you're talking to me. And if they cannot abide by that, I need to limit my time around that person and limit the instances when I'm in a conversation with them. Real friends will respect the boundaries that you put in place when it comes to those types of things. So disorienting drugs. So sometimes what we see is people go out on a date, or they're out partying, and someone will slip a drug into something they're drinking, right? So you have Rohypnol, gamma hydroxy butyrate, ecstasy, or ketamine. Those are all things that they can drop into a drink, and those will disorient the person to where they're not able to control themselves. And in some cases, they may not even remember what happened. They may just wake up hours later. So whenever you're in public, not even talking about necessarily a bar setting, just whenever you're in public or around other people, don't leave your food or drink exposed to people that you do not know or you do not trust. And when I say do not trust, I mean, for me personally, it's my wife and some of my coworkers. Those are the only people. Some of my coworkers, I won't leave my food or drink around, not because they're going to drop disorienting drugs into them, but because I just don't trust them to do something else. But you don't ever want to walk away from your food or your drink when you're in public, in a public setting. You don't want to lose sight of those things, because it can happen very quickly, and you may not even recognize it. You may be 5 feet away from your drink and not even realize somebody did something. So just be careful about that when you get older and you get out. So the continuum of survival. Awareness. That's kind of what we talked about a little bit. Be aware of your surroundings. Know what's going on. If you're walking down the street, then just be aware. Are there other people on the street? What's the lighting conditions on the street? Are there overgrown bushes? Are there abandoned houses? What's the environment like? And in the event the light's out on the side of the street I'm on, but there's better lighting on the other side of the street, well, I want to avoid that dark area. I want to go over to where that light is. If there's abandoned houses, or if there's people just hanging out on a front porch that's right next to the road, and they're already yelling at other people that are walking by, I don't want to put myself in that situation. I want to avoid that. So I want to go over to the other side of the street, maybe even go around the block if I need to, go out of my way. In the event I am confronted, how am I going to respond? All right, am I going to defend myself? Am I going to resist? Or am I going to comply? If you're going to resist, you can start with verbal resistance. You can yell. I know you can have a whistle. You can run. Here's the thing about running, though, is if you run, what kind of shape are you in? If you try to run away from somebody, are you going to make it 2 blocks and then pass out because you haven't run in half of forever? That's more and more where I find myself, unfortunately, as I get older. I can't do the things I could when I was younger. So it really wouldn't hurt to keep your cardio up, because if running is an option, you want to be able to run to create space, to put distance between you and the assailant. But in the event that they chase you down, you want to have enough stamina that if you need to defend yourself, that you still have strength for that encounter as well. The benefits of yelling are it actually assists you in breathing, and it can shock the attacker, and it draws attention to the situation. Right? So sometimes when you have an emergency event like that, your adrenaline will flow into your system, and you can become so focused. We call it tunnel vision. You can become so focused on one thing that you forget other things, and you can actually lose your ability to hear things for a short time. And it really takes a toll on your system. Well, yelling will actually help offset some of that. It can slow your heart rate, it can regulate your breathing, and it can help your body kind of get back into that fight or flight mode. So different ways that you can resist. You can actually comply. Compliance is a form of resistance. If someone comes up and pulls a gun out and tells you to do something, you have a choice to make. You can try to physically defend yourself. You can try to resist. But if they have a gun and they may shoot you, it may be a better option to comply until you get a window of opportunity to get away. But that's a decision that you're going to have to make. We talked about physical defense. I would encourage you to get into a self-defense class before I tell you to physically resist. I mean, you can, that's your choice, but a self-defense class would help in that. If you do take a self-defense class, make sure you continue to practice. It's a perishable skill. It is something if you don't use, you will lose and you will become rusty. So continue to practice those. Extreme weapon defense, if they have a gun or a knife, choose your opportunity to try to get away or to try to defend yourself. Be smart about it. If you want to purchase non-lethal weapons, like electronic, like stun guns, tasers, they make keychains that are out there. You're in chemical weapons, mace, those types of things. By all means, purchase them, learn how to use them. And it's kind of like the key situation when you're approaching your car. Whenever you're walking to and from your vehicle, you need to have those items in your hand and have them ready. All right. So just picture coming out of the mall. I don't even know if you guys go to the mall anymore. Just picture an old person coming out of the mall 20 years ago, right? With bags of stuff on the day after Thanksgiving. Someone comes up to attack them. They're like, oh, hang on a minute. Let me set all my stuff down. Let me go through my purse. Let me find my mace, and then let me spray you. Well, that's not going to work out real well. So you can have those different items, but if you're not prepared to use them, they're not going to help you. So make sure you have whatever your defense will be, make sure it's ready when you're moving to and from your vehicle. When you get into lethal weapons like firearms and those types of things, check with your local laws. Make sure you understand your local laws. I recommend training for those as well. You'll want safety classes. And then you're going to want to be proficient. You want to practice with those items. And then always report the incident to the police. And if you don't report the incident, oftentimes we don't know it happened and we can't intervene, or we don't know what to look out for. So reporting is a very important part also. If you do use weapons, especially deadly weapons, higher justification is required to use a weapon. So if somebody comes up and let's say they just touch you on the shoulder, well, you could use physical resistance in the manner of pushing them away or you physically pulling back. That does not warrant pulling out a gun and shooting somebody, right? So that's what I was referring to with understand the laws, understand what the boundaries are, understand what you're allowed to do. And that's where the training and the safety classes and all of those things come in to those. So should you choose to resist, your level of resistance needs to be equal to the level of aggression that you're experiencing. If someone comes up and grabs a hold of you in a very strong manner, you don't just need to kind of pat them and say, hey, will you let go of me? I want to get away. No, your resistance needs to be equal to the amount of force they're exerting when they grab a hold of you. So if they grab you very strongly, you need to resist very strongly. And then the 10 basic principles. Having a plan will decrease your reaction time, but it will increase the reaction time of the person on the other end. So if you scream and shock their conscience, that increases their reaction time. If you resist, that may even increase their reaction time because they're not expecting that type of behavior from a quote victim. You want to make sure you maintain good balance. You don't want to end up on the ground and you don't want to fall over. Stay on your feet. Have a plan of action. You can use distraction techniques. If you're carrying something, you can throw it. I mean, if somebody were to come up to me and ask for my wallet, right? They come up, they pull a gun or a knife or whatever out, say, give me your wallet. So I can take my wallet out, and if I throw it off to the side, I immediately know if they're there for my wallet or if they're there for me. Because if I throw my wallet off to the side and they chase my wallet, that is a form of a distraction technique. Yes, I gave them my wallet, but I got away. I can replace everything in my wallet. I can replace my credit cards. I can replace my cash. I can replace all of those things. I can't replace me if I get shot. So that is a form of a distraction technique. And that way I immediately know kind of what the situation is. Are they after me or did they really just want my money? Other distraction techniques, could be multiple different things. It could be calling out to somebody else. It could be screaming. It could be a myriad of different things. So identify vulnerable locations. Should you choose to resist, there are multiple vulnerable locations: eyes, throat, nose, groin, shin, tops of the feet. Those are all vulnerable areas. Use personal weapons, hands, feet. You can claw, you can scratch, you can pull hair, you can do all kinds of different things. Avoid confronting force with force. You don't want to go toe to toe with somebody who's trying to do you harm. The police department does not want me going toe to toe with people who are trying to resist arrest or to do public harm. They gave me this utility belt with a baton and mace and a taser and all kinds of different things on it because they do not want me to go toe to toe and use force with force. They want me to use tools to avoid that. Avoid panicking. Don't get panicked. Keep on target. Keep a clear mind. The moment you can disengage and run, that's ultimately your goal. You want to get away. You want to create distance. Don't stand around. Let's say you have mace, you pull it out, you have to spray somebody. Don't stand around and look at your handiwork. Run away, get away, create distance. And then, like we talked about, make sure and practice. If you don't practice your techniques, you will get rusty. So offensive posture is often assumed by the attacker, and that leaves them vulnerable because they're on the attack. They're reaching out. They're trying to do things that will leave areas exposed. A defensive posture, you think about putting your arms up to block your face or your head, often protects most of your vulnerable and weak areas. So your plan of action is forged in training and is polished in simulation. So you train and then you just do it over and over and over and over again. And then you want to be able to understand all of the pieces that you're doing and what those different pieces do. And it's unique to you. Figure out where your strengths lie and utilize your strengths in any situation that you find yourself in. All right, that concludes the PowerPoint presentation there. Does anybody have any questions?
I have one, if they don't. You mentioned several different kind of more common situations that something like this could happen in. As a kid, I remember feeling kind of invincible, like, nothing would ever happen to me. And my parents could tell me until they were blue in the face that you need to make sure you're prepared, but nothing was going to happen to me, right? I'm invincible. So I was wondering if you could share maybe any specific scenarios that are kind of common in this area that teens maybe find themselves in, that they can keep an eye out for and to be more aware of.
Yeah, and real quick before I do that, I actually just read a quote today by Bruce Lee, and someone approached him and they asked him, they said, you train to fight all the time, but you talk about peace. Like how can you reconcile those two things? And Bruce Lee responded, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. So it's always best to train and prepare and never need to use those techniques or those strategies than it is to find yourself untrained or unprepared and then all of a sudden need those. So that's one thing. I can tell you something that happened last week in a city neighboring Chattanooga. A lady was out jogging and somebody came up while she's jogging in the middle of downtown in Dayton, Tennessee, and says, hey, I know a better place to run. And she just kind of brushes him off and continues running. He pulls up ahead of her, gets out of his truck, grabs her and tries to put her in her truck and said, hey, come on, come with me. I know a better place to run. She was able to get away and to call the police. And to my knowledge, they haven't located the suspect yet. But that's an incident that just happened a week ago within about 10 miles of Chattanooga. Some other really, really common situations we find now, the world's kind of changed, right? Everything has gone more technology based. So what we see a lot of is people reaching out over social media networks, liking posts, and just even starting with liking a post or making a comment, and then engaging through those posts or those comments to gain confidence. And then they may reach out in private messages or ask for a different way to contact you so that it's not public or it's less traceable. And they begin to build a relationship in that manner. It may never go beyond that, but it can also evolve all the way to having that person run away or sending inappropriate content. There's just an endless supply of that going on the internet today. And I don't know if you all keep up with how the technology world is evolving or not, but a lot of your major players, Apple, Google, Microsoft, they're actually coming out with software now that will scan the photos that you store on your devices so that they can report offenders for specific crimes dealing with children or people under the age of 18. And so that's a really, really, really big one. Be careful with who you interact with online and be careful in what manner you interact with them. And just as a general safety rule, when it comes to social media, you may not want to post things like, hey, we're on vacation for the next 2 weeks and nobody's watching our house, because people may see that. And even if your friends are trustworthy, you don't know if all of their friends are. And one of their friends may see something on their device or something you've been tagged in together and look at your page, and they may be able to figure all of those things out. So just be very, very, very careful when it comes to those things.
Oops. Hit the wrong button. Thank you. Do you guys have any other questions?
I see one from Christy here. It says, a little off topic, but what is the best way to communicate with an officer if pulled over or stopped for some reason? Sometimes it's hard to talk when you're nervous. That is a great question and a great point. And let me just tell you from my own personal experience. So I have been pulled over once or twice. And believe it or not, I am nervous when I get pulled over by the police. And in general, if it's after dark, it's best to turn your dome light on, pull over, turn your dome light on. I roll my windows down. That way the officer can see into the car as he approaches the car, and I have both of my hands on the steering wheel. As the officer approaches, there's generally some type of conversation to engage in. Hey, for me, it would be, hey, I'm Lieutenant Francis, Chattanooga Police Department. Do you know why I pulled you over tonight? The person may say, yeah, because I was doing 95 miles an hour in a 35 zone, or they may say, I have no idea why. So at that point, I let them know, this is the reason I pulled you over. Do you have any legal justification for those actions? Then I'll ask for ID and all of those things. So when I'm the person being pulled over, when the officer asks for my ID, I let them know, all right, officer, my driver's license is in my back right pocket. I'm going to get that now. My insurance card is in my glove box. I'm going to get that now. And I'm keeping him informed of everything that's going on, because the other reality is, most likely if I get pulled over, I have a gun in the vehicle, right? And I let the officer know that as well on the front end. I've even, one time I got pulled over and I let the officer know, hey, I'm just letting you know, I am a police officer. I'm not asking to get out of the ticket in any shape, form, or fashion. If you feel like you need to give me a ticket, give me a ticket, but I do have a weapon on me. This is where it's located. And so I just let him know on the front end, because I don't want him to be nervous about that either. So in general, make things visible, keep your hands in the open, and let the officer know what your actions are going to be before you do them.
That's very helpful, especially coming from your personal experience as a police officer yourself and going through those same emotions and steps yourself.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've been on both sides of that equation.
You mentioned several weapons of sorts, like the mace and the I can't, taser, all the ones that you mentioned, which are, I guess, safer to have on you that you know is easier to learn how to use, that won't necessarily be used against you, and you can have anywhere? Because I'm sure that some things are maybe not allowed, obviously guns, but in some places when other things are, if that even made sense.
No, it does. Some places restrict chemical agents like mace. Like if, for example, if you go to the court building here in Chattanooga, you cannot carry mace into the court building. It's not allowed. So even the little purse size, pocket size ones, they don't allow it. So one of the things I carry is a monkey fist keychain. All right. So they make them with different things in them. This one has a plastic ball in them. I have one that has a metal ball bearing, and it's incredibly heavy. But you can use that. You can actually swing it. I don't know if you heard that or not, but you can swing it and you can hit things with that. And most of the time, people they see this hanging out of your pocket and they just think it's a keychain. But if you actually carry your keys like this, you can use that as a weapon. And there's other little things you can buy that'll actually fit on your keychain. And there's different things you can do with those. Some of them, they have like two little prongs that you can fit your knuckles in between, so that so it sticks out between your knuckles. A lot of those things aren't really regulated or checked for because people just view them as keychains. But I mean, mace is a good one. It's not real hard to use, but at the same time, in the event you were to get sprayed with it, you want to be able to know that you can fight through that and still get away or do what you need to do. Here at the police department, they actually spray us with mace during our training, and then we have to go through a mini obstacle course that includes giving baton strikes and knee strikes. We have to identify a weapon in somebody's hand, put them on the ground, and put them in handcuffs. And then in my academy, at least, we had to go over to a pile of shell casings and pick out 3 different size shell casings, and then take them and find an instructor in the crowd of people, give them to the instructor, then we could go wash the mace off. And it was really just to teach us how to fight through that in the event someone took our mace and used it against us. So any weapon you were to choose, when it comes to things like chemical agents, just understand they can be taken from you and they can be used against you. And the other thing that's very important to understand, if you were to progress as an adult and get things like a gun, if you pull that out and you pull it out and never intend on using it, you could have that taken from you and used against you. So it's not a game, and it's not a decision to be made lightly. That's when you really have to know what the parameters are on the legal authorization to use those. And it's not a toy. It's not something you pull out to show off or to scare somebody. And really, honestly, the same thing could be said for mace or any of these other items. Is when you pull it out, it's time to use it. And so just be aware of those things, and then check in advance if you're going to go somewhere like a concert or a court or something like that. And a lot of times nowadays on their website, they'll have a posting of what's prohibited, what's allowed, what's not allowed. So if you have, let's say, mace, you're going to an event, you can leave that in your car. I know that doesn't really help. The whole point of having the mace is for protection from there to the event. But you can do those things. And then some places may allow you to leave it at the front door, kind of check something in. Most places won't, but I have come across a couple that will.
Nice. Thank you. Do you guys have any more questions? No, he was pretty thorough, wasn't he? Yeah. Oh, there's something in the chat box. I think it was Christy said thank you. Yeah, Christy said thank you. If nobody else has any more questions, oh, I did have one more. You mentioned self-defense classes at the beginning. Did you say that the police department offers those or somewhere local? What did you say again?
So we offer self-defense classes for ladies.
Okay.
Our class is specifically designed for girls. We generally teach them from the ages of 12 and up. And the corporation that we are certified through, they do have classes for men. We just don't teach those here, but we do teach a women's self-defense course here. through the police department. It's kind of been on hiatus because of coronavirus and everything else, but that is something we do and we want to get back doing again as this, hopefully, as the virus subsides.
Awesome. So if you were interested in that, would you just look at the Chattanooga Police Department website or call the non-emergency police department number, or how would you find out more information about that?
Just email me. Myself and Sergeant Atwell are the two that head it up, and then my mom is also a certified instructor. So the three of us are the ones that actually teach and manage the class.
Okay, great. So I'll get your email address, and if anybody wants that, I will make sure to get you in touch with Lieutenant Francis. And if there are no more questions, no, I'll go ahead and let you guys all go for the evening. Respect everyone's time. And again, thank you so much for sharing with us tonight. That was incredibly helpful. It was packed full of knowledge. And guys, this is recorded, or obviously you know that because you heard it say this is a recording. So if you want to go back and review anything that he shared with us tonight that you've forgotten, I can send that recording over to you. So thank you again, Lieutenant Francis, for your time. We greatly appreciate it as always.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Have a good night, everyone.